Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Black as night, erase death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate make it right. I myself am strange and unusual.
Cast a circle, spark some incense, and grab a cup of tea, because it's time for the Cousins Coven podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Welcome back to the Coven.
Whoop whoop. Welcome back to the Coven, guys. We're here for another episode. And I just had to say, I have a show recommendation for people if you are in a show hole because Game of Thrones has ended. But I have HBO Go, so I got sucked into this like Regency romance called Gentleman Jack. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
Okay, awesome. I don't know. I have phases where I really love watching like Regency shows and all that kind of stuff. And this one is actually based on a real woman named Anne Lister. And so apparently this woman, she lived in this house, Shibden Hall, and she was a lesbian, and so she had these secret diaries where she talked about her love affairs, her finances, and she was kind of masculine and didn't like conform to the way women were supposed to be super feminine back in the day. Like she kind of dressed slightly like a man, and she ran things like a man. She took care of Shibden Hall, took care of all the finances, and in my opinion was like really progressive. Well, everyone's opinion, she was really progressive, maybe like the first out lesbian, but then at the same time, like she had these diaries where it was all in secret code, and someone who was in Shibden Hall actually discovered them, and when they decided to crack the code and they found out her truth of her sexuality, they were like, oh my god, we have to destroy these diaries. But the guy was like, you know what, I'm gonna hide these behind the wall. And so he hid them to safekeeping behind this wall. And so now they're out and they're published. You can read them. And now that's like an awesome show where you get to follow her adventures. And I freaking love it.
That's so cool.
I thought
How
so.
Fun.
Like, I think it's a really cool show.
What a trying time she lived in.
Yeah, for sure. And like in the show, it's kind of portrayed like she just doesn't back down from all the men in her community who tell her like, you can't be doing this. You're a woman. You can't collect like the rent. Get out of here. And she's like, I sure can. So I'm going to do it. And I'm also going to ride the carriage, and not ride the carriage, but like she would steer the carriage, which was apparently a big deal for a woman to do. And I was like, you know what? I want to be like her.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I would recommend that show.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, go check it out. What about you? What did you find for us this week?
So this week I have a couple of news articles. One was on Enceladus, which I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it is one of Saturn's moons.
Oh, okay.
And it is somewhere that we are supposed to be sending some satellites to, or they're possibly wanting us to go there. Not as humans, but like send kind of like the Mars rover, send something like the Mars rover over there.
Okay, that'd be cool.
To get more information and collect data. So the satellites that they currently have over there have collected enough data to know that there is water completely all over it, along with ice and all of these other things. They believe that it's a really cold environment, but once they zoomed in really close and got just below the clouds, they could see land in there, and they are now admitting at this time that they believe that there is life on that planet.
What kind of life are we talking? Like microscopic?
They just think that it supports life based on like ocean life in the waters. So we're talking about, it could be a dolphin like we've never seen before, or maybe it's like ours, who knows. So they believe that that's there. They're not 100% sure, and until we get there we won't know for sure. But the methane gases that are there and the organic molecules that are in the air that they've been able to capture with the satellites they currently have out there have told them that there is some sort of life, most likely. So pretty cool. I know it's minor, like it's not great big alien ships coming to visit us, but it's still kind of cool that they're kind of opening up the realm of possibility of life on other planets now.
So I'm kind of reading it here just to catch up with you, and it says Acladius' ocean is now estimated to be 1 billion years old, which is the ideal age in terms of life starting and evolving.
Right.
And they're saying if the ocean was too young, there wouldn't have been enough time for different elements needed to be mixed together. But if they were too old, those chemical processes may have stopped already. So are they saying that that life wouldn't be able to sustain any longer?
No, I think that they're saying that they think that it's there. It's not just that particular planet. There's several in Saturn's area that they believe might have life.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I had another news article too. This one was just basically these physicists from Russia and the United States. They ended up doing research on time travel. Ooh. And so with the help of a quantum computer, they were able to successfully, very smallly, with this quantum computer, move back into time. We're talking about a really small window of opportunity for them to move back in time. I mean, not opportunity, but this small measuring amount. I'm not real keen on what all the language is, but they were able to go back just a smidge. So they think that this is just a stepping point for them to do it even more, which makes me think all along time travel would be real because things have happened in the past. It'd be like that Mandela effect thing. So things have happened in the past that we might not remember correctly because, butterfly effect happens when we time travel.
Right, because if time travel is possible, that means that at any point in time, people have already traveled back and fucked with things. Like Marty McFly trying to have sex with his mom. Or not trying to have sex.
He didn't want to, but she wanted to, which is
I know. Like, why is that the plot to this main huge blockbuster movie?
Right.
Avoiding incest because you went back in time to see your mom.
Right.
Anyway.
So, I know. So what do you think? Do you think that there would be a possibility that it's really happening?
It's kind of like anytime we talk about aliens, like at first I just want to reject it out of fear and be like, no, I don't want that to be real. So it freaks me out. If time travel exists, I don't think that anything beneficial could come from it. I
just think it's these rich fuckers, excuse my language. I think it's just these rich dudes, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna pay to do this because I need something exciting in my life, and I've already done everything else, so here we go. I'm gonna pay this huge amount of money, and I'm gonna travel back in time.
Like it's some sort of amusement thing, like this is the new Westworld, is just travel back in time.
Yep, exactly.
That would be so cool and creepy. Like, we would want to go back in time to, like, you'd be like, Roswell, and I'd be like, Point Pleasant, take me there. And just to try to find these cryptids. What if we could travel back in time to see the Patterson footage in real time? Oh my god. No, I'm freaking myself out, Wendy. I'm going down this rabbit hole because, like how we said, time travel's already real. What if someone pretended to be Bigfoot and walked in front of the camera?
Maybe that happened. I'm going back to Nuremberg, Germany in 500, in the year 500 or 1500, whenever those crazy things happened.
To see the first UFO battle in the sky.
See what it really was.
So that would be how the Cousins Coven tour agency starts.
I was like, man, this is going to take us to the next level if we could do that.
We will guide you safely in time. It's going to be like the Prisoner of Azkaban scene. We'll be like the Hermiones who were like, get down, but don't be seen. Gotta keep up. We're moving. Bigfoot's on the way. Dude, that'd be cool.
Would be cool.
I just took it to a whole new fantasy, but that's how I deal with all my problems, is I just make them fun and approachable.
Oh, I love it. Oof. I love it.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think it's real. I've thought it's real for a long time. I think I thought it was real when I was a child after I read, what was that book called? The Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne. For some reason, that made me believe in time travel.
And that's what that story's about, is time traveling?
No.
I didn't ever read it, so.
But I think Jules Verne might have written a book on time travel.
I think so. I think maybe The Time Machine or something like that.
Oh, maybe. Maybe I read that book. Because I used to read Jules Verne when I was a child. So this kind of gives you some insight as to where my little child brain really comes up with all this shit.
Right? Exactly. Teaching us the impossible is possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was all I really had about that. I definitely think there's life on other planets, so that Encladius thing that I was talking about would be cool, and I definitely think there's time travel. And I'm still kind of stuck on your show. I was thinking, man, that woman must have had such a hard life on Gentleman Jack. That woman must have had the hardest life.
Well, they don't portray her as being, like, too disenfranchised.
Oh, that's
so
good.
she never, like, people at the time were hung if they were found out to be, like, homosexual and stuff like that, but that never really happened to her, unless that's, spoiler alert, season 10, like Game of Thrones style. She just has something happen to her. But so I think for the most part she was fine, and she was smart enough to be open but not 100% in front of everyone, more like in closed doors with just her lovers. And so probably like it kind of got out, but people didn't really want to talk about it or spread it because it was, you know, dangerous information or things like that.
Which is crazy because I think that there was a time period where you could be a lesbian and it was fine.
Right. But just probably not Victorian era, if that's, you know.
Yeah, closed-mindedness for sure.
I'm just really glad that one of her, I guess, ancestors decided to not burn the diaries.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
Yay.
Yay. Well, should we move on?
Yeah.
Yes, you guys, this week I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about Houska Castle and Hellmouths in general. And my friend and listener, Taylor, she suggested that we do this, so I was really excited. Taylor and I, it's a really interesting story, but she was friends with my daughter and has been for years. We've never actually met her in person, but we've been online friends, and she's become kind of this adopted daughter of mine. So I'm her Oregon mom, and she's my East Coast daughter. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cute. It's nice to have people all over the world. So and we keep in good contact, and so when she gave this to me, I couldn't wait to jump on it. So I'm glad we get to talk about it this season. All right, so do you want to take it away and talk to us about what Hellmouths are?
Yeah, so maybe you are familiar with this, but I think the name kind of gives it away. Hellmouths are these alleged gateways to hell that can supposedly be hidden all over the world. And when I looked into it, the Hellmouths was something that's kind of like a myth depicted in really old, like, medieval artworks. And a lot of times you'll see, like, a beast with a giant mouth just open, and things are crawling out of it, like little winged devils and monsters and all this kind of evil. And a lot of the times you'll see, like, guardian angels painted kind of as the protector to keep all of that suppressed in the hole.
Right.
So it just goes back, I think, to a level of superstition, maybe some paranormal activity linked to it as well.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of both. And I can tell you that I know a little bit about Hellmouths, not just because of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but which was fun to find when we're trying to research Hellmouths, and all we come up with is Buffy.
Yeah, I got so many in Sunnydale, and I'm like, it's another fake one.
But when you go to the aspect of a gate of hell, it kind of takes it a little bit further. I think that I started really learning about gates of hell when I read Amityville Horror, just because in that one they talk about a hole being down in the basement that kind of went to that it seemed like it was endless. I don't know that was really there, but I remembered reading about it.
Right, since we have found out that Amityville did stretch the truth on a lot of things, so, like, I do feel like maybe Hellmouths and these gates of hells are just, like, folklore, but there's something sinister or, like we said, paranormal tied to it.
Right. So I think that kind of was where my not obsession, but my interest came up with Hellmouths, and then that turned into finding out about the gates of hell, and supposedly there are these 7 gates of hell. I'll kind of go into that a little bit more later, but that section of it I think is easier for me to imagine than just this gaping hole in the earth where demons and monsters come out of it. I mean, that's how it's portrayed. I can't talk. That's how it's portrayed, is that it's just these beasts crawling out like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know that's really what a gate of hell is.
Right. Should we break down some of the top Hellmouths that we were able to find?
Yeah, let's do that before we go. So you guys, we do have a couple of really big ones, but we're going to go over a couple of smaller ones too. So let's talk about these.
So one that popped up on top lists was Mount Asore, which is a dormant volcano and a sacred Buddhist site located on the remote Shimokita Peninsula of Japan, and it's supposed to be surrounded by seared earth and clouds of sulfur, and the name Mount Asore translates to Mountain of Horror, and it's sitting near the Sanzu River, which Japanese Buddhists believe say all souls must cross before the afterlife, and popular mythology describes Mount Asore itself as the gateway to hell. While this description may not sound alluring on your next vacation, it is actually a popular tourist destination. So during your stay at the cusp of the underworld, you can actually visit the Itako, which is actually a group of elderly blind shamans who claim to communicate with the dead. So there is some paranormal, spiritual elements there that I think is where, those legends keep growing.
Nice.
I'm always down to visit shamans. I'm like, yeah, add that to the list.
And I've always wanted to visit Japan, so...
Heck yes.
There we go.
Yes.
So I came across one called Hellmouths Township, which is in Pennsylvania, and apparently there are these 7 gates that you have to go through in a specific order, and if you go through these gates, they're actual gates, so if you go through them in this specific order, it's supposed to open a Hellmouth. It's in the middle of a wooded area off Trout Run Road in the northwestern part of this township. And all kinds of kind of wild rumors are attached to the area. There was supposedly an insane asylum nearby that had caught on fire, allowing all of the inmates to escape.
Yes, get out!
Well, but the 7 gates that were surrounding the area trapped them, and then they were burned and killed.
Oh, no!
In the fire.
Dang, that sucks.
Yeah. Another story linked to this 7 gates is an eccentric local doctor who built a very large gate at the entrance of his property, and rumors started going around that there was a series of gates beyond that one along a road leading deep into the woods, and to keep kind of his house hidden away from everybody, I think. It was said that once you passed through the 5th gate, you would never return. Ooh. And that the doctor just kind of kept you there. Although that was supposedly just a rumor. And the rumor of the asylum, too, they say it's just a rumor. But the gates are actually there. And the town actually is called Hellmouths Township.
Interesting. But
the original name was supposed to be Hallam, Hallam, based on a town in England. But that translation was lost when the township was put together, apparently. So they're trying to say that it's debunked, but people have seen paranormal activity there and other things. So who knows? Maybe real, maybe not.
I was actually more afraid of the asylum than the Hellmouth. Like, ever since we've researched the old school asylum conditions and how you could be locked up for literally anything and lose all of your freedom, being beaten and experimented on, like, that's why I was like, yeah, escape!
Yeah. Except for these were murderers.
Oh, so. Did I miss that part of the story?
I might have missed saying it, but apparently there were these murderers. They were inmates.
Okay, so I was curious about that because I heard inmates and asylum, so they were actually prosecuted murderers and things like that.
Right.
Okay. All right, fine. Maybe you deserve it. Who am I to judge?
Right.
I have a little bit of info on another Hellmouth, which is called Pluto's Gate, which this one actually is another one that had tragedy and still could kill you, because it has these mephitic gases that leak from the rocks. So they kind of labeled this as the gate to hell kind of a thing. And back in the day, ancient literature describes travelers bringing animals to the site as a mean of sacrifice to the god Pluto. So sounds like some maybe possible pagan rituals going down here.
Yeah, gotta love the pagan rituals.
Yeah. Right? Just throw your goat up there, it's gonna die and suffocate. We don't know why, but Pluto loves it.
And next one that we came across was the Gates of Guinea, and this is in New Orleans. So supposedly because there's such high paranormal activity there are these 7 gates that are related to the 7 different cemeteries or locations of high activity, and that they believe that because they're in certain points that there would be a Hellmouth potentially in the center of it. I'm not positive on that part, but from what I read, it seemed like it was near, like in the center of these cemeteries.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the last one I was able to find was kind of interesting to me anyway, is called The Door to Hell in Turkmenistan, and it's a large fiery pit. Like if you Google it, it's literally just like a circle of molten lava. And originally this was just a gas field that was set on fire by Soviet scientists because they just thought it would be a good idea at the time. And it's been burning continuously now for over 40 years. And one of the reasons people think it's a little creepy and mysterious is that spiders are really drawn to the area and they swarm there by the thousands.
That's crazy.
Gross.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, what does it put off this certain scent that potentially smells like, oh, look, all spiders are welcome. Come to this Hellmouth.
You think they'd be really hot and, like, not be able to walk.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, again, the real life elements are really scary. Like, ew, wait, spiders? Hell no.
Yeah. And a pit of fire? Yikes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I found one more called Stoll Cemetery in Kansas, and it is supposedly a gateway to hell that opens twice a year, once on Halloween and once on the spring equinox. And people believe this because there's some extreme high cult activity there. And many worshippers of the Dark Lords will go there and perform their rituals. Some people say that this is one of the main 7 gates of hell on its own. And just kind of like I said earlier, don't forget there are these mythical gates all over the world that supposedly have all this activity. And yeah,
I would like to try to figure out what was really going on with the occult activity and who are these supposed Dark Lords. Like, that's so generic. I've only ever heard that been used on Sabrina. Like,
well, they said Satan. I threw in the word Dark Lord, but they said Satan and like other demons.
Okay.
They used other demons.
Okay, I'm glad to know. Okay,
Yeah.
So Satan worship, I guess. But
Dark Lord was my word, but
okay. I was like,
so I stole it from Sabrina. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, I was like, wait. This article, do they know they're talking about? Now it makes sense. I like it. You got colorful with it, and I just called you out.
Like, dang it, woman.
Wait, Dark Lords. All right. Well, actually, that sounds really cool.
Yeah. So pretty interesting. You gotta love cemeteries.
Right?
I love them. It's interesting to think that they believe that mouth to hell only opens up twice a year, and one of those is on the spring equinox. So I'm like, isn't that a positive?
Yeah, exactly. That's
time. So
that's why I was kind of.
So I feel like it may have been twisted because they did say Satan worshippers would go there.
Yeah.
So maybe they twisted it to think,
right, because people think Halloween is a devil worshipping thing when we're like, no, it's just Samhain. Right. We're just doing ancestor work.
But it's also that time, even in equinox, it's that time of year where the veil is thinner.
Oh, that's true.
So maybe
that's true.
Maybe I think I did see that it was potentially on a ley line, if I remember correctly. So if it is in fact on a ley line, then that would make it so that the activity was even stronger during those time periods, maybe.
Right. I love ley lines.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. I like that one. I kind of want to look into that more. Stoll Cemetery.
Yeah, I think we could go there.
Yeah.
It's United States bound, so. Okay, I'm really excited to kind of talk about this one, St. Patrick's Purgatory.
Awesome.
So, it's in one of my favorite places, Ireland, on this little island called Loch Derg. Or that's not the island name, that's the water name. And the island itself is called Station Island.
Gotcha.
So the whole island today is a large monastery, and it's very interesting that even to this day, there are all these pilgrimages to there in late May to mid-August, And people flock there and they do all this praying and this fasting, and they have this 3-day kind of pilgrimage where they can ask for guidance from God and kind of release all of their sins and just have this wonderful kind of fasting party. They don't feast, they fast.
A fast party.
Yeah. So, but this has been going on. People have been pilgrimaging there since I think the 500s. Mm-hmm. That's a long time to be going to one island.
That's pretty cool. I like the idea of that tradition. Must be really raising cool energy, I would think.
Right, exactly. But originally, the reason why people were going there, I think, may have been a little bit different. And the reason why is because there was supposedly a Hellmouth there, which is now closed to the public. The origins of this Hellmouth go all the way back to 400 AD during the era of St. Patrickus, or St. Patrick, however you want to call him. And if for those of you who don't really know him, he was a Christian missionary and a bishop who later was known as a saint. And it's said that he lived to be the age of 120. He was just kind of this mystical, mythical man. The legend goes that people were doubting the existence of God and Jesus and basically doubting their faith. So St. Patrick, he prayed to God so that he could have help converting the pagans to Christianity and make them believe in their existence. So God or Jesus, I'm not really sure which one it was, because the ancient tells, I think, say God, but the newer tells say Jesus. He showed him this pit or cave on this station island that St. Patrick was at. And he went to it and he opened... There were like some rocks in the way, and he opened the rocks, and there was this kind of sulfury smelling, glowing light along with all of these angels and demons. And he actually saw Satan himself. And God told St. Patrick that this was purgatory. And he said that when you show this to others, they will have no choice but to believe in the existence of heaven and hell. And so people started flocking there to see this gateway. Once the gate was opened, Patrickus was shown all the things that purgatory had to offer. I shouldn't say it like this, but purgatory has all these great benefits, guys. Come and see it.
Like you have pamphlets for it?
Yeah. You could be tortured for your sins.
Sign on up.
Oh,
I just have to say I was super triggered. I'm just like, Patrick.
I know, because it's religious.
Because they're converting all the pagans. I am not a fan of St. Patrick. I'm like, you know what?
I know. Well, then, basically, he was just showing him everything that would happen through the 7 deadly sins. Satan himself was there, and he talked to him. He was also given visions during this time of what was to come after purgatory. And he was basically shown that there were several different realms of existence that he would have to go through after living on earth. And the demons would come and go as they pleased. So not only were they here to see him, but once the gate was opened, they were able to go out into the world. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, okay, well, that definitely sounds like a Hellmouth, where this would be like some sort of gateway where demons and angels and all sorts of paranormal stuff could come and go as it pleased, which would kind of bring some reality as to why there's so much activity in the Ireland area, maybe.
Right.
I just thought that was really interesting. So later on, some archaeologists came to this cave to kind of check it out a little bit more. And they said that it was actually used later on as an ancient sweat house because there was a natural sauna there.
Yes.
And it became very heated like all year round, but especially during the springtime. And so people would go into the cave when they were sick and sweat out all their ailments. And they said that there was potentially it was also potentially used as a spiritual healing cave.
Yay,
so kind of like the
that.
sweat lodges. Yeah, like the sweat lodges of Native Americans. Mm-hmm. And people would just go there and pray and heal and just use it for beneficial purposes. So it was a little bit pagan.
Yeah, exactly.
When they were using it. Yeah. But then in 1632, guess who came? The Catholics. The Catholics came in and they took hold of the island, and all of the buildings and writings from its inception were destroyed.
Damn.
So any evidence that they had of the Hellmouth and what it released and all the things that came along with it and all the realms of existence were destroyed. The monastery itself was torn down and rebuilt, and the cave was blocked off.
Oh.
So although the pilgrimage exists today, it kind of doesn't exist for the same reasons. So it was more than just God trying to show us that there's purgatory. It was more of, look, there are all these other realms of existence and all these other beings.
Yeah.
And
it kind of sounds
this is...
like, you know what, it's not evil just because it's some weird pagan place, but look at what Earth has to provide you. It's a warm, natural healing thing. And when you lean into it and embrace that, it's not even that bad.
Exactly.
Obviously.
So people were just going there having a good time, you know, healing themselves, and then the Catholics came in and said, "No, you can no longer believe this. This is what you have to believe."
So to this day, do you think that we can go to those caves and go in the sauna, or is that, like you said, closed off?
No, it's completely closed off. It's never been opened up again.
That's weird. I imagine it's just a door with like a really nice staircase and a handrail. Like that's all it takes is just one board.
No.
But I'm sure it's maybe.
They said it was a cave, but it was maybe 8 feet underground. So the opening, you could go into it, and it was just like any other cave that you would go into under the ground. But it was extremely warm. And I don't know how they know this, because if all the information was destroyed, the stories must have been passed down, you know, person to person. But they said that there were glowing lights, like it would glow down in there.
Okay, so some paranormal stuff.
Right, some paranormal stuff. So I just don't know if everything was destroyed in 1632 regarding the Hellmouth, how the information came about. And maybe the word purgatory is wrong. Maybe Jesus was, or God was showing St. Patrick something totally different, but the Catholics turned the word to purgatory.
Yeah, just like a power struggle is kind of what it sounds like for this area. Like, no, we're reclaiming it for our sake. No, we're going to reclaim it for us.
Right.
And put our spin on it.
But it's still kind of a cool place, even though it was taken over. It's just kind of sad that it was torn down and closed. And it's not even because it wasn't, you know, I can understand like if they closed it off because it wasn't structurally sound, you know, if it meant that if you went into it, it would cause harm. But it wasn't like that. So archaeologists said that it's just closed off to the public, and they can't explain any more than that because they haven't been given the rights to.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder what's really under there.
Maybe it's caved in.
Visit the monastery.
You know, probably not easily accessible,
Probably
because
not.
otherwise you'd think people would go down there.
Maybe the monastery people can go down there. It's just closed to the public. They don't say it's closed.
They're
It's
just down
closed
there
to
enjoying their
everybody else.
sauna.
Yeah, they're like, we can converse with these people down here, but you may not.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, interesting. So what have you got?
Well, I'd have to say thank you for Taylor for picking Houska Castle, or Houska Castle. I was so into it as soon as I started researching it. And the Hellmouth is actually underneath this 765-year-old castle. And of course, it has a lot of dark legends and history and folklore, which is super fun and fascinating. The castle itself is located in the Czech countryside? Czech. In the Czech countryside, about an hour of Prague. And before the Houska Castle was built, the Hellmouth actually just sat open and menacing. And so there were all these terrifying stories about the pit and these winged creatures that would crawl their way out of it at night. And these stories were just spreading far and wide, going everywhere. Villagers were really terrified to come out of their homes at night. Most of them wouldn't even go anywhere near the Hellmouth, even during the day. So before construction on the Hellmouth fortress began, all of the villagers' prisoners who had been sentenced to death were actually marched to the edge of the bottomless pit and condemned to a sinister deal. They would be offered to be lowered down in the hole as a test subject because they wanted to know what lay below and how deep this hole was. And any prisoner who managed to make their way back from the pit alive was to be forgiven for their transgressions and set free. So it didn't happen very often that anyone actually made it down to the bottom or come all the way up. Legend says that the first man who was tied up and lowered down into the Hellmouth began screaming in terror the moment he passed out of their eyesight and into the dark. The villagers were kind of freaking out, and so they decided just to pull him back up. And they were shocked by what they saw. They said that the prisoner, who had been a young man only minutes before, had visibly aged more than 30 years, emerging with a full head of white hair.
Wait, so like a portal?
Just a hole. Like imagine a big hole, and they have no idea what's through it. So it's a hole into the earth.
Interesting. I wonder if he felt like he'd been gone for a long time.
Oh, that's why you're saying portal, because he comes out older.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what if he just was so scared, like, oh, and he aged 30 years.
And that's where we get the old cartoons where it's like, oh, when I'm frightened, my hair goes white.
Yeah, ghost. And like from Nightmare on Elm Street when you get that white streak. I kind of call bullshit on this story. I don't think this really happened, but this is my own personal opinion. Everyone tells this tale, so it's like an old legend. What if it is true?
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like with all legends, the part of it is based on truth.
Yeah, so maybe your portal theory is actually right on par. I never thought about that. I like that.
Love it.
But they were never able to lower anyone to the bottom successfully to gain any insider answers, so we may never know. The locals then decided to try to fill the hole with dirt, rocks, and other debris, but they could never hear anything hit the bottom, and even with a days of work to trying to fill the hole, their efforts would be in vain. So what if it is a freaking portal?
I know, right? So now some other planet or place of existence has all this freaking dirt and rocks, and they're like, this dirt and rocks keeps coming up and we can't stop it.
Hey, Ma, the dirt's coming again. And they're just annoyed.
I just can't keep this place clean.
But we got to think, what would that place be like? There must be some sort of demonic creatures, because there were continual reports of the demonic creatures attacking locals and dragging them into the pit. And who knows, was that all just a lie and a rumor? Right. But they decided they had to close it up. And the best way to do it was to construct a massive castle over it, right? So they thought, that'll fix it. So they built this gateway, or I guess they built this castle to seal the gateway for good. This was constructed between 1253 and 1278. And once completed, the outside of Houska Castle appeared to be just that, a regular run-of-the-mill fortress, but those who got closer could actually notice that there was something strange about the structure. The windows, for instance, would look normal, but if you got up close, you would see it wasn't an actual window. There would be nothing but like walls behind the glass. And the castle was not like most castles because it wasn't by any trade routes. There was no water source, no kitchen, no stairs leading up to the second level. And of course, it wasn't even meant to house people at that time. There were multiple remodeling jobs throughout the years where all of this actually changed, and now it has plumbing and stairs and more of a structure. So I think that's a little more interesting. Nowadays, people use it to like do events in and things like that and live at. But at the time, it was just there to keep things, I guess, hidden and to keep the fortress secure. So the gateway to hell was covered by a heavy floor and a chapel, and the chapel was dedicated to the Archangel Michael to help fight against the armies of hell. And another clue to the true purpose of Houska Castle, aside from all the oddities and the way it was built, was found in the faded paintings on the walls of the chapel, some of which were discovered to be the oldest paintings in Europe. So the chapel has these pictures of the Archangel Michael in two forms. There's one where he's fighting a dragon, and dragons were supposed to be a symbol of evil. There's another one where he's holding a sword in one hand and scales in the other, kind of like weighing the souls as the last judgment. There's another picture of the crucifixion of St. Christopher. And the other painting, which is my favorite, which is considered to be the evil painting, is a female centaur, and she's holding a bow in her left hand and aiming at a human figure. And the left hand is significant because apparently at this time, the left hand was associated with the devil during this period, kind of like the left-handed magical path, So they're saying that this female centaur was maybe linked to paganism, showing what was really going on, what could come out of the hellhole.
Wow. So interesting.
Yeah.
So it seems like they come from this fairy tale mirror world almost.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think centaurs, especially chicks, are awesome thanks to Fantasia.
Yeah. Cool.
Further history with Houska Castle is that during World War II, it actually was home to the Nazis. And
Yikes, of course.
Yeah, they love that supernatural shit.
Mm-hmm.
But the exact purpose for being there was really never popularly known, but there, of course, are theories. So some of the theories are that they destroyed all the evidence of the work at the end of the war. Well, that's not a theory. That's what really happened. They destroyed all the evidence. So the theories are, what were they doing is that they were maybe conducting paranormal research and attempting to harness the power of hell. Maybe that was like where they put prisoners, like a prisoner of war camp, and they were doing experiments.
That's the scariest thought of all.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, sure, they could do paranormal research. Aye, not human experiments. No.
Yeah, just the idea of being stuck and tortured on and ugh.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that theory is because people to this day can hear voices and EVPs and screaming. They hear scratching like underneath the church floor where that hole is, and there's a lot of paranormal activity. So I was able to get a lot of different instances of what weird shit they're seeing. So caretakers of the building have witnessed headless spirits that stumble through the courtyard, and streams of blood are gushing from his decapitated body. The current owner of the building is Jaromir Simonek. He claims to have watched his drinking glass just like levitate in front of him and his friends on a table and then just calmly lower itself right back down. So moving furniture, very poltergeist-like. And one of the more evil presences is encountered in the hunting lodge, which I did see on YouTube video of. The hunting lodge has a whole wall, like a 2-story wall dedicated to like rams taxidermy on the wall.
Oh.
Very creepy imagery.
Oh.
And in there, one couple talked about how they were just winding down for the night and they heard a loud thump on the floor next to them. And when the wife turned to look at the noise, there were 2 humanoid shadow figures approaching her and whispered about how they had killed some young girls. So shadow figures were seen as well. There's also a headless horse who wanders the ground. I don't know why they're all headless. Maybe that has something to do with the experimentation going on here.
Right.
There's another famous, almost cryptid creature who wanders the ground that's part bullfrog and part bulldog, which is just, I don't think I can comprehend. So what part is frog? Is a frog legs? Frog head? I need to know.
Frog legs, dog
right? And it's just like hopping around. Is that cute? Maybe.
I don't know.
And of course there's a woman in white and sightings of giant black dogs that they'll just call the Grimm.
Oh, that kind of makes sense. Like, if anything is paranormally or considered to be evil paranormal, they're supposedly hellhounds, so the black dog would be a hellhound.
That made me think about how you had Grimms before.
I know, right?
Yes. The creepiest one of all is a group of people that are said to be chained together who walk through the castle, each with a terrible injury or carrying a dismembered body part.
Oh, that goes back to the
prisoners, right?
The prisoners of war.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, what is it, A Christmas Story, how they have the ghost with the chains rattling.
Yeah.
Very creepy. Some say that even just visiting Houska Castle will bring bad luck into your life. But today the castle is open for tours and all these other events, and I was able to see ghost hunters exploring the grounds, taking EVPs. Like, for the paranormal lover and me, I would go there and risk some bad luck, but I don't believe in that. So I would go. Yeah, so that's Houska Castle.
Interesting. I want to know if where the chapel sits, if that really is where the Hellmouth is situated in the castle, and if that part of the legend is correct, then have they had like banging on the floor from underneath?
They said scratching, so I would sure there's banging too, since that's very, you know what I mean? Why not?
And I was like, is the floor worn out in that area? Have they had to replace it? Has it caught on fire? those were things that I was thinking. I'm like, I want to know if that place at one time caught on fire.
I don't remember coming across that specifically in my research, but potentially.
So maybe the church, I wonder what the church has in it, if it's adorned with stuff that would cause this door to remain closed.
That's where all those paintings are, is in the chapel.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. Like the ghost hunters I saw in there, they got EVPs circling that area, hearing cries. There's been several television shows that have gone there, some international ghost hunter shows, and they all have come to the same conclusion that this place is paranormal, that they all caught evidence.
Very cool. That's great.
Yeah, what a great suggestion. Thanks again, Lindsay.
No,
Taylor.
not Lindsay, Taylor.
Sorry, we edit that. Thanks again, Taylor.
So I kind of wanted to talk about some possible explanations and then maybe tie it all together. My episode would not be complete if we didn't talk about Enoch.
We love us some Book of Enoch. Okay, what you got?
I know. So in the Book of Enoch, I've read this back and forth. I've read it probably about 6 times since we talked about Enoch.
Maybe we should do a small, blurb for people who might not remember what Enoch's about.
Yes. So Enoch is
Noah's grandfather?
Yeah, Noah's grandfather, who he went with supposed aliens, which he called angels, up into the sky, and he wrote a book about it. And this book is kept from the main part of the Bible and is considered to be some sort of, not really heresy, but non-essential information.
Which it's super freaking fascinating, is the truth.
Yeah, it's like one of the best books you will ever read about paranormal stuff.
And it's free on Google.
Yeah, and free on Google. And there's tons of magic in it and all sorts of other things. So in this Book of Enoch, he talks about how the angels or aliens, however you want to think of them, as the earth having 12 portals. And these portals reach from heaven and earth, and they go above the earth and below the earth. So each door or window, he kind of referenced it almost like a window, goes, the main part of it, the floor of it would be on the actual earth. And it reached up into the sky and below the sky. And so I had a couple of quotes that I wanted to read. And he says, "And at the ends of the earth I saw 12 portals open to all the quarters of the heaven, from which the winds go forth and blow over the earth. Thus the 12 openings of the 4 heavenly directions are completed. All their orders, all their evil effects, and all their beneficial effects have I revealed to you. I saw the key holders and guards of the gates of hell standing like great serpents, and their faces like extinguishing lamps, and their eyes of fire, their sharp teeth." He said that there were 6 gates in the west, 6 in the east, and they were all about 7 feet tall, and they opened according to the sun and the calendar, which changes based on the rotation of the planets and the seasons, which I thought was pretty fascinating. So he's saying that each gate didn't open. Each gate of hell only opened at certain times. They opened every day, except for only for a certain amount of time. So they were open at 7 hours at a time along the path of the sun and the moon.
That's only civilized. So, that way, it can give the workers their day off, who stamp everyone's hands.
That's right. That's right. And so since there were 6 in the west and 6 in the east, he thought that, or he was told that 3 in the east and 3 in the west would be for the sun, and 3 in the east and 3 in the west would be for the moon.
Okay.
The arc of the arcs. And the moon and the sun shadow would go in the same arc as the gates.
Like it. Very celestial.
Very celestial. So I wanted to kind of note too that the Bible, I know you're not a big fan, but also kind of talks about gates of hell. They also talk about 3 in each direction, northeast, south, and west. So 3 times 4 is 12. So they mentioned the 12 gates of hell. I felt like they were potentially related to some sort of witchcraft somehow, the way that they talk about it in the Bible. But they don't talk about it in a bad manner at all. And, kind of like when we call on the corners, we're calling the guardians of the gates. And those guardians are the guardians of the Hellmouths. So when we call on the guardian of the northeast, south, and west, those are potentially the guardians of the Hellmouths.
So Hellmouths and watchtowers would be different. They're just doing multiple guardianship duties, you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Tell me what you think about Enoch's theory, or Enoch's not theory, Enoch's actual story, where he talked about these gates of hell. Do you think there would be any reality or basis on that?
Well, with our conversations, we talk about all these weird happenings. And as a pagan person, I do work with the watchtowers, and I believe in like invoking elements. And obviously, a lot of people believe that you can invoke demons. So who's to say that there isn't some weird cosmic portals to multiple things, whether it be these elements or the demons? So yeah, why not?
Nice. So I guess I felt like Enoch was also talking about kind of, it almost seemed sort of magical the way he explained it. He's like, there's these things and you can go through it and you can see things, and there's all these protectors at the gates and you can talk to them. And I was like, well, this is definitely related to some sort of magic. Right.
So it's like hidden knowledge or other worlds, did he say?
He said that they were portals. Okay. So he didn't necessarily say that they were related to hell, but because he said that they could show you, what was his quote again? He said, thus the 12 openings of the 4 heavenly directions, which he means north, east, south, and west, are completed. All their orders, all their evil effects, and all their beneficial effects have I revealed to you. So basically what he's saying there, from what I can decipher, is that these 12 openings are the north, east, south, and west entrances or exits with the sun and the moon, and that they are showing you the good and the evil.
Gotcha.
So he said, I think in another area that you could travel, that they were kind of like portals that would show you the good and the evil.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. Because I do feel like, ancient texts, especially religious ones, are very black or white, So if we try to peel back those layers, maybe these Hellmouths aren't as bad as people say.
Right. It's just misunderstood. Yeah. And because of certain fears that have been ingrained in us, we're just so afraid of it. We're not open enough to see the good and the bad. I don't know.
It's just like, it just can't be comprehended maybe.
Right. So with that, then I started kind of diving into ley lines a little bit after Enoch. And so then I found this guy named Alfred Watkins who came up with an idea that the earth has these magnetic lines around it, and the way that they're oriented is in regards to the sunrise and sunset and the solstices, kind of like what Enoch was describing.
Everything always comes back to the solstices. Like, I think the pagan wheel of the year has it right. These are holy days.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, these are holy days. And I don't know why we stopped. I mean, I guess there are religions that also celebrate that. It's just by different names.
What, the solstices?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they call them something else. All religions, I feel like, do it in a certain manner.
Typically, if they don't want to call it the actual name, they'll just kind of winter solstice. I would say nowadays it's gotten watered down to that, but and even the meanings of them have definitely changed through time, like we talked about with Lugnasta.
Sure, absolutely. So I came across another guy named John Michel, and in the 1960s, he took Alfred Watkins's drawings and ideas and said, hey, I'm noticing a pattern here. There appears to be something supernatural on all of these magnetic lines that he's talking about. So he started noticing that there were different landforms and ancient sites located on these ley lines, which he considered to be a planetary energy grid.
Right. That's so awesome.
Right. And so kind of a side note, there's just the strong belief that the consciousness can travel through these lines. That's what he wanted to get across, is that if you're in one place on the energy grid, then you should be able to send your consciousness to another place on the grid to talk with other people. So kind of fun. So then I came across this grid map. The planet, it's related to the planetary energy grid, and it shows these pinpoints that are kind of all interconnected, and they got this information from old drawings and readings that Plato had done back in the day, which supposedly Plato's information came from Enoch. So I feel like this map is probably the closest that we could have to find out where the actual
gates are.
Gates of hell would,
Got it.
And so basically this map is just 12 pentagon shapes sewn together, which would represent the 12 gates. And all of these gates are pinpoints or on some sort of sacred sites. So that's more than just an energy grid. It's more than just that. It's also showing where you might find these. And this is what the ley lines are based on, is this map. So all these men's ideas put together to create this ley line map. And so when you're Google searching ley lines online, some of them may not be that accurate, and you kind of want to go and see what's what. Because I started really diving into a deep hole, and I don't know if you remember me being like, oh my gosh, I found this one for Oregon, and Salem's on that map, but nothing bad's happened there. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. You were like, don't let this be like this other time. So I had to go back and be like, okay, let's see where ley lines really come from.
Right. And it can be hard to just see a good map, but I just personally will take the word for it. If someone says that haunted place is on a ley line, I'm like, oh, okay, it's on a ley line. Like Houska Castle's on a ley line, supposedly, or near ley lines.
Right. So I actually used the map. I printed it out, and I'm all with my ruler like, is this on a ley line? Is this on a ley line? And I did find out, remember earlier that Stoll Castle, the Stoll Cemetery that I talked about?
Yeah.
And yeah, so that is actually on a ley line.
Of course it is.
Which I thought, yeah. So, but some of the things that they talk about are not on a ley line. There's a good portion of the ocean that's on ley lines, like the Bermuda Triangle is in a perfect ley line area. So I could guess why there's so much activity there, because there's a pinpoint exactly where that's at. So is Houska Castle on the energy grid and on these ley lines? Why, yes it is. It's not on one of the major dots. It's kind of in between and on the line itself, but it's still on the line. So it's not on the major Hellmouth dot where you would expect a gate to be, gateway to hell, but it's still on the line. So I figure that means something.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
yeah,
you're trying to tie it all together, and I really appreciate all that research, because I mean, ancient knowledge of these weird gates tied to ancient knowledge of these weird lines, and guess what? It's on these Hellmouths.
It's on these Hellmouths. So I did find it very interesting that St. Patrick's Purgatory was also on there, and it is one of the major dots. So meaning that it was one of the pinpoints of the 12 gates. So is it an interdimensional gate between Earth and the heaven, as suggested by Enoch? I don't know. But I'd like to believe so after all that research.
It better be.
It better be.
Yeah, I don't know how you tie in paranormal activity, because the St. Patrick's Purgatory, there's any paranormal activity?
Well, that we know of, because all that information was destroyed. The only thing that was handed down was the information about the cave.
But to this day, people aren't there? I thought you said there was people there.
There's people there, but they don't discuss that. They only talk about the prayer time. They don't.
Okay.
I think if we visited there might be some other information that we could find out, but
like from locals or whatever.
Right. But from the information that I was looking at online, it didn't really show too much, other than they kept saying, oh, there's a Hellmouth here, and this is the story. But where's all that paranormal activity? Oh, well, Ireland is filled with paranormal activity. So what if it all comes from this ley line / Hellmouth that's at St. Patrick's Purgatory?
Yeah. Interesting stuff, for sure.
So, yeah. Good times.
Yeah, I think it's...
I was
going to say, I like that the writer Joss Whedon incorporated Hellmouths into his whole show with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because it's the perfect way to describe every episode why shit is happening. Just blame the Hellmouth.
Right, exactly.
Blame the Hellmouth.
Right. But unfortunately, California, only one part of California would be on a Hellmouth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like at the edge of Baja, where Baja meets regular. So I don't know where Sunnydale was. I thought it was not that far from LA.
I thought it was just fake place.
It is.
Oh.
But in reality,
you got real deep for a second. I lost you.
I'm sorry. In the show, I should be more specific. I know Sunnydale's not a real place, you guys. But in the Buffyverse, it is a real place.
It's not based on reality. When did you come?
No. I just wanted to see if his...
How accurate he took Buffy.
how accurate his information was. So it's not 100% accurate, but it's still a freaking good show.
You know, I actually prefer the movie to the show. I love the Buffy cheesy movie.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think I was really obsessed with the TV show. In fact, I've watched it 3 times, I think, over the years.
I can see that. It's a long show. I watched it all, but I didn't get super deep. I was a really big Firefly fan. That's where my heart belonged.
Oh, yeah, I watched that too. I did Buffy and Angel, and I don't know if you ever watched Angel, but I literally had to stop watching for a couple of months after the character Cordelia slept with Angel's son.
Whoa.
After she'd taken care of him from birth. And I was like, nope.
What?
Nope. I gotta stop watching for a little bit.
Stupid drama. I actually really liked Cordelia more than Buffy. She was a cool character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was awesome. I think my favorite was Willow, but obviously you know why.
Yeah, Willow. TV witch. Yeah. I loved her boyfriend Seth Green when he was like a werewolf.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was awesome.
Until he cheated on her because that's how those shows are. They're like, well, we want to change directions here.
Right. So tell me, what's your final take on Hellmouths? Do you think real, fake?
Oh, as far as portals to otherworldly things? I feel like in most cases, I think you have to take a case-by-case scenario. Honestly, like some of those places that were popping up didn't really seem too paranormal, just like mysterious with weird legends. So I don't know if I believe in them exclusively being portals to demons. So I guess I'm somewhere on the fence.
I think I can get behind the paranormal activity if you throw in, I mean, not the paranormal, but if you throw in the ley lines, I can.
Yeah, like I believe Houska Castle's haunted for sure.
Sure.
We weren't able to find out too much about Purgatory's stuff as of today, and if we could just get some ghost hunters in there, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, very cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, should that wrap up our discussion on Hellmouths for today?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, I'm totally down to vacation in sauna by any Hellmouth, as long as there's not spiders. Exactly. Although spiders are supposed to be like witches' friends and blah blah, but I don't know about that.
Okay.
Thank you guys for listening. You can join us next Wednesday. We're going to be sharing our research on the planes of existence. And in the meantime, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Cousins Coven, and check out our blog at cousinscoven.home.blog, where you can find our witchy words of wisdom, spells, and all of our archive podcast episodes from Season 1. So send in your research ideas, witchy questions, fan mail, or your paranormal experiences into cousinscoven2@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and please like, subscribe, and share with all your witchy and weirdo friends.
And may you find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and join each other. Blessings to all.
Whoop whoop.